Welcome to the 3% Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter, joined as always by Tom Roberts from Riff Raff.
Hello.
How are you?
It's been a lot longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine. There's lots of things that have gone on in between, such as Winter Institute, which we can talk about. The release of book. I was gonna do a whole fake ad that we were sponsored by Bookshop.org, but I wrote it last night and I put it into a post instead. So we lose, but it was going to be a fun brought to you by Bookshop.org moment, which we could talk about that too. But anyways, I think for our first podcast back in a while, you wanted to talk about American Dirt, huh?
I feel like we have to just to get it out there, and I mean it's important. Look, there's a lot of important issues that whatever you want to call this fiasco has brought to light about the book selling world and the publishing world, and America in the 21st century. So
I assume most people know about this, but why don't you recap what's going on?
So the very broad recap is that when I don't know when this book deal happened, but so publisher, oh god, I'm blanking. Flatiron,
run by Bob Miller of Harper Studio fame,
right, and distributed by Macmillan, so they sort of oversee the whole thing. Macmillan is basically like a version of Random House for anyone who isn't like totally aware. And they also publish FSG and Picador and some other imprints that you and I probably pay more attention to than Flatiron. Anyway,
I think Flatiron's really new too.
They're like 3 years old or something. They do not very many books, and they focus on big books. Like I think they do Oprah, like when she writes a memoir and things like that. So anyway, let's just say a year and a half ago. I don't remember exactly when it happened. Janine Cummings gets over $1 million for this novel that she had spent 5 years working on, researching, et cetera, et cetera. And it's essentially a thriller that focuses on a woman and her daughter who, in the wake of family tragedy, have to get across the border. They're Mexican. They have to get across the border into the United States. Janine Cummings is... this is open for debate, and I really hate even having to mention this, but not Mexican. Let us say that. She is not Mexican. And
she identifies as Puerto Rican.
So she gets a lot of money for this book. It's Flatiron. They have a lot of leverage with big books and whatever. So the marketing budget from like the day the book got signed has been enormous, and all of the effort in the building, in the Macmillan building and in Flatiron especially, were focused on this one book for this season. The book officially went on sale, I think, the day that Winter Institute started, whatever that was.
January 21st, yeah.
21st, thank you. And even in the run-up to the publication date, there were some people who had gotten advance copies, obviously, who were calling bullshit on this and saying, it's full of sort of... stereotypical portrayals of Mexicans and Mexican culture, and calling it an appropriation that this white woman shouldn't be writing this book, and that there are so many other books written by Mexican writers who have been sort of ignored by the media, and et cetera, not given opportunity, and certainly not given over $1 million for the book, and all this sort of thing. So a lot of noise was bubbling up, which is when. So okay, I will explain this from the bookselling side to say that when we met with our rep, and this would have been back in September or October, I'm guessing, about this season's books. This season being whatever, January to March, I want to say, or April. The rep, who I like, he's a good guy. He sort of just gets our tastes and understands what it is we're looking for, and he doesn't generally push the things that we wouldn't necessarily care to sell or know that wouldn't sell well for us in the store with our narrow sort of focus. But when we got to this one, Em and I had both sort of said, yeah, no thanks, but hadn't really given it much thought. We just looked at it and said, this is not for us. Like, we just don't care. But he gave us the hard sell and basically said, we had to take it. It's going to be the big book, whatever. then so we ordered 3 copies, whatever. Then the sort of stuff started coming out, and I called Macmillan and said, I know we have this on order. Please cancel it. I don't even want to think about this book again. Then it started there was more and more noise coming out. And then by the day of the on sale date, so much backlash had come, including pictures from the author dinner that was held, I'm guessing during
the launch party. Yeah.
During BEA. I think that was it wasn't the launch party last week. It was, it was from.
Yeah.
So they were trying to fet her during BEA, basically. Mm-hmm. And they had put, anyone who hasn't seen the cover, it's a sort of white cover with some vaguely Mexican sort of stencil art of birds and whatever. But interwoven is barbed wire. And so the centerpieces on the table of wherever this dinner was were these wooden boxes with flowers in them, but wrapped in barbed wire. Which seems, in retrospect, incredibly insensitive. So by the time the public, so those pictures had emerged and were being shared on Twitter and wherever, there was a lot of backlash. There was fortunately or not, whatever, she was at Winter Institute, the first event Wednesday morning. Our friend Javier Ramirez interviewed her. And I think the event was called something creating conversations around American dirt. And Javier gave her the basic sort of questions and then closed with this one, which is, why do you feel that you have the right to tell this story? It didn't, erupt into screaming matches or anything, but there were definitely some very pointed, passionate questions from the booksellers in the room. That said, there were also some other booksellers who think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, who were there to support her and praise her. So that all happens. Then, she's whisked away down to Washington, D.C., I think. Everything is sort of going according to plan for Macmillan because there's just getting tons of attention, right? Mm-hmm. And a few days later, booksellers started canceling the events due to backlash from people in their community. Left Bank in St. Louis, I think, was one of the first. Somebody in San Francisco, I think, also canceled an event.
I think Left Bank Books said they not only cancel, but they won't carry the book either.
Wow. Okay. And then within a few days after that, her entire tour was canceled, citing safety concerns, which I don't know. I don't know where those are coming from. And then, Oprah had also picked it to be her book club and then rescinded it. So
did she actually rescind it?
She did, yeah. Excuse me. I'm nursing a very mild cold after Winter Institute.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Anyway, so that's where we are now. Tour was canceled. Book is still out there. It's definitely on the bestseller list. But we're still getting commentary, including... So what did you have?
I haven't... Okay, there's a bunch. Okay, I can't find that Oprah has officially rescinded that.
I forget where I saw it, but I thought I had seen that.
It just keeps saying publisher cancels the tour. The Oprah publisher cancels controversial Oprah Book Club Choice American Dirt tour, but it doesn't. I can't find one that she's canceled it. I know that LitHub, who praised this book as one of the most anticipated books of the year, has a petition about getting it not to be an Oprah Book Club book, but that's not the same thing. Although, okay, so what's awesome is here are some of the blurbs for this book before anything. I strive to write page turners because I love to read them, and it's been a long time since I turned pages as fast as I did with American Dirt, John Grisham. This book is not simply the great American novel, it is the great novel of Las Americas, Sandra Cisneros, Stephen King. I defy anyone to read the first 7 pages of this book and not finish it. Anne Patchett, I'll never stop thinking about it. Kristen Hanna, irrelevant, powerful, extraordinary. Julio Alvarez, a dazzling accomplishment. There are quotes from Maureen Carrigan on Out Fresh Air, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, Time, Women's Day, Esquire, Vogue, Marie Claire, San Francisco Chronicle, Chicago Tribune, New York Journal of Books, Elle fucking Ellen Hildebrand, Don Winslow, Joe Hill, Erica Sanchez. There are no fewer than 40 blurbs for this book about how awesome it is, which changed very quick. Like these blurbs are out there, and now I think most of these people would probably prefer to rescind it. Starred reviews in Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, and Booklist. Interesting. Okay, so two things. One, Laura Miller wrote a thing about it Friday? I don't know, whenever the 31st was. And about like what went wrong with this. And this is the best paragraph. This is one of the most batshitty paragraphs I've ever read. Where did it go? Okay. But the most common take on the American Dirt fiasco is that it resulted from Flatiron's hubristic failure in what the industry refers to as, quote, positioning. That is, communicating the genre a house considers a new book to fit into. Quote, from what I've heard, said one senior editor, it's a really quick, pacey, dramatic read, and there's a whole coterie of people who will say that to their friends, and word of mouth will move across the country like wildfire. In other words, the novel, end quote. In other words, the novel is a work of commercial fiction, much like Where the Crawdads Sing, and other titles that sell in large numbers will generally flying under the radar of cultural critics and political commentators. Where Cummins' publisher went wrong in this formulation was to present American Dirt as if it was also, in the senior editor's words, quote, a contribution to a vital understanding of this issue, end quote, with the implied claim of representing the issue accurately rather than using it as a backdrop for an entertaining suspense story. Quote, it's a commercial book that was mispositioned as literary, another senior publishing executive observed. Flatiron's publisher, Bob Miller, essentially acknowledged this in a statement released Wednesday, noting, quote, we should never have claimed that it was a novel that defined the migrant experience. This set American Dirt up for a degree of scrutiny to which most popular bestsellers are not subjected, at least not right out of the gate. Quote, you can't be Twitter woke and Walmart ambitious, the assistant editor quipped. That's all fucked up to me. I know that it's true, but like that you can have two different standards based on what you say a book is fucked up. Either the book is doing something that's like appropriating these voices or being stereotypical or being harmful, or it's not. I don't care if it's like a Walmart book versus a Twitter book. Like that doesn't matter to me. Second thing, most interesting thing. Do you know who the acquiring editor is for this? No. Amy Einhorn. Do you want to know what else she acquired?
Go ahead.
The Help. Another book that 10 years ago had similar sorts of problems, although it was like still a little bit, if that book came out today, that book would be savaged.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Savage. So this woman has managed to do both of those things and then just got promoted to be president of Henry Holt.
Yeah.
This is our world. Next thing that's fucked up. Okay, so Washington Post has a op-ed piece by Kathleen Parker called American Dirt. Critics are censoring the author based on her genetic background. Okay, I'm just going to read this until I'm...
Do you even need to read it with that fucking title? Jesus.
Until I don't. If you're thinking of writing a novel, be sure to write only about your own race and culture, or else. The recent controversy over American Dirt, a book that was first widely acclaimed before its author became the target of violent threats, reminds us yet again that freedom is fragile and the democratic ideals of tolerance and fairness dangle by a thread. Author Janine Cummings doubtless thought she was acting nobly when she spent 5 years researching the immigrant crisis along the border, traveling to Mexico, interviewing migrants, volunteering at a soup kitchen that serves migrants, as well as visiting orphanages. But thanks, perhaps to overindulgence of her publisher, Flatiron Books, Cummings reportedly received a 7-figure advance, and high-profile rollout, Cummings earned the contempt of critics who considered her unworthy of her topic, not because the book wasn't quite good enough, as some critics have noted, but because she wasn't sufficiently Latina. Poor Cummings had only one Latina grandmother, and get this, her Irish husband, once an illegal immigrant, wasn't quite underdogish enough. Never mind that many Irish immigrants came to the United States as indentured servants, or that it was common for signs in stores and restaurants and for job listings to say, no Irish, or no Irish need apply. Only once Cummings genetic... Okay, one paragraph, I can't do this. Once Cummings' genetic shortcomings caught the attention of social media's literati, it was off to the bonfires. Not only was she condemned, prompting her to cancel her book tour in fear for her safety, but a petition was circulated asking Oprah Winfrey to remove Cummings' novel from her book club list. There we go. It goes on and on and on and on and on about how it's all about censoring Cummings based on her genetic background. Merely reading the preceding sentence should send chills up one's spine, and seeking to silence or shame her with threats of violence is a scene from some other dystopian novel about a country or time not our own. And it goes on. So yeah, so that's a fun one. that was like the craziest thing that I found yesterday about this. But yeah, those are two other things I wanted to add.
I just have to point out just how fucking blindered that take on the whole thing is.
It comes in hot.
Jesus. Okay, there's so many problems with all of that. I mean, no one is censoring her. It's on the fucking bestseller list.
It's the number one bestseller on Amazon at this very moment in time.
And if bookstores choose not to support her by having her in their store, that is their right. No one is censoring them. If the violent threats are real, which I mean, I sound skeptical and I'm sorry. It seems weird to me that it would rise to the level of violent threats. I don't know. I don't know what to make of the whole thing. Anyway, it just seems like it's okay. Like Salman Rushdie was legitimately threatened. His life was threatened, right? And it wasn't so much that there was censorship happening in the U.S. by that. Like, because you had to stay in hiding, he wasn't being censored. His book was still widely available. One last thing on this. So I went to the event at Winter Institute because I was just curious. And I will say that the most disgusting thing about the whole thing was that the author's response to a lot of the, how did you, basically the basic question came down to, who do you think you are? Why do you think you have the right to tell this story?
Yeah.
And her answer often sort of came down to, well, I invite you to read the book, and then we'll have a conversation about that, which is basically just buy my book, right? Sales, 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 sales. And I understand that, like, as an artist, maybe she does feel like no one is understanding this, and I wish you would all just read it, and then we could talk about it and whatever. But, like, okay, then give away 1 million copies, and let's do that instead of having to buy it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Did people at Winter Institute actually have to buy it though? There must have been a billion. There must have been a billion arcs out there for this, right?
Yeah, I have no idea. So there was another op-ed, I suppose you want to call it, from Ron Charles, also on the Washington Post, who called the book a melodramatic thriller tarted up with flowery ornaments and freighted with earnest political relevance. The book might have fallen unremarked into the great vat of sentimental suspense fiction that New York pumps out every year, except for the unprecedented collision of promotion and denunciation. So this is, where am I looking? Shelf Awareness, the daily booksellery thing. They also quote a statement from, they quote some of the Laura Miller article where she talked to some editors and who were kind of savage, frankly. Where is this? Oh, booksellers are, quote, handling sales of the book in a variety of ways. City Lights, of course, is not selling the book, while Green Apple Books, also in San Francisco, is displaying copies of books by Latinx authors next to American Dirt, which is so craven.
Wait, what was that last part? Sorry.
Displaying copies of books by Latinx authors next to American Dirt.
Oh, yeah.
That's craven. That just proves that all you care about is sales. God bless the Shelf Awareness for including this. In one of the funnier pointed commentaries on the controversy, McSweeney's published, quote, as a 28-year-old Latino, I'm shocked my novel, Memoirs of a Middle-Aged White Lady, has been so poorly received.
Yeah, I saw that too.
That's great. All right, I don't really have anything else to say about this. It's just, I'm impressed that it has permeated the culture. One of our friends and customers who is a high school teacher told me that her students actually asked her about it. And which, I mean, you teach students older than high school who probably have no idea that any of this is going on.
They don't.
So for high school kids to know about this, I mean, that's...
I told my daughter to talk about it to her English teacher, and she was going to today.
Interesting.
I sent her one of the articles.
It's really, really become a thing. We have not had anybody come in looking to buy it. I have had people come in and want to talk about it, but no one wants the book. So
yeah. Oh, another quote is that it's a grapes of wrath for our time. That's pretty intense. We should mention that Miriam Gerbo is one of the people that really got this going. As a writer that really ripped into the book. Her review like the main one that people source as like the beginning of like the articulating what was wrong with the book and its stereotyping and all that kind of stuff.
Right. To be fair, like it's not that the book was written by a white woman. It's the fact that a lot of the cultural stuff is stereotypical and not very thoughtful. That's the main problem here, right?
So
there's definitely an issue of like using this sort of situation that these immigrants go through for commercial gain, but if it had been a better written and more sensitive sort of thing, this backlash might not have been as bad. That's for sure.
Yeah, so Gerba told Vox that she received death threats after posting her review of American Dirt, and that from the start everything's been snarled up in identity politics. One thing we haven't mentioned, that in the afterword to American Dirt, Cummins confesses that she wished, quote, someone slightly browner than me would write it, end quote. And then Ron Charles has a weird paragraph here, too. Cummins has been attacked for exaggerating her ethnic background and for failing to note that her Irish husband, once an illegal immigrant, didn't belong to a sufficiently repressed minority group. That complaint is so clouded by historical amnesia that I don't know where to start. Listening to the anger directed at Cummins for having only one Latina grandparent, I suppose future novelists will have to submit their manuscripts along with the 23andMe genetic profile.
Jesus.
Yeah. They're trying to get Oprah to cancel it, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Yep. That's basically all. That's it. And they're going to make $1 billion off of this.
Yeah. I mean,
all of them. She already has another $1 million advance for her next book.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's the end of the Laura Miller piece. I don't know who she was talking to. They all were off the record. I don't see this leading to a decision not to acquire a book that we would have acquired in the past at all. But I do think in cases where it's mismatched between the identity of the character and the author, the value of the books over books where the author is a member of the community being written about will be more closely scrutinized. Oh, did you see this one? Well, one source said he was sure the incident is, quote, humiliating to Cummins. Her publisher and other people associated the book. You can wipe your tears away with money.
Yep. That's a quote. This is why I hate these people. I mean, I've never really liked Bob Miller. I think that he's kind of a fraud. Like he's like a showman, like a conman. Like he's always like talking big about what Harper Studio is revolutionizing publishing, but it really didn't do anything that was particularly unique or special. And because he wouldn't report to someone younger than him, he got fired the second his contract ran out, which was fitting. But I don't think Flatiron seems very impressive. I feel like all of it just seems very dirty.
Yeah, and I will say, if nothing else comes out of this, booksellers of a certain bent who are, sensitive to these issues are definitely going to look askance at everything Flatiron publishes from here on out. So they're going to have to rebuild a reputation to some extent.
And Henry Holt, since the woman now runs that.
Right. So, I don't know. I will say the weird thing about sitting in the room with all the booksellers who were, I feel like it was very polarized. It was like people like me who wanted nothing to do with the book. And then I hate to generalize, but it kind of felt that way. Middle-aged white ladies who loved this book was those middle-aged white ladies are doing the buying for the store. And most of the other, the people on the other side of the fence were frontline booksellers, not necessarily people making decisions on what to carry. So they're stuck in this precarious situation of like, the owner of my store decided to buy this. I don't really feel good about selling it, and yet I'm stuck kind of selling it. And that's problematic. That's an unfortunate aspect, I think, of a lot of not just bookselling, but publishing. I mean, to go back to the Slate article, like there's a huge divide between the older generation and the younger generation about how they deal with issues like this. And it's unfortunate that, those younger people with, better politics are just not in a position to do anything about it quite yet.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else to say about this.
No.
It's basically all of it. I have to do this whole thing again in like an hour with my students. What else about Winter Institute?
So it's funny. I feel like, I've only been twice in the last 4 years, and it's hard to sort of gauge whether or not Winter Institute has changed much. I don't think it has. It definitely felt bigger, for sure. Like the small press thing was like 10 times as big as it's ever been, you know? And the author reception that night, I walked in the room, I was like, oh my fucking God, this is so many authors. So it's gotten, I think, as big as it can get, which is great. I mean, the more booksellers that can attend and sort of get inside the industry a little bit more, I think is useful. But I don't know. I'm increasingly more aware that considering what we do in our store, that Winter Institute is not necessarily for me. It's really great to go and see, you know, people like you and people who publish things that we actually sell and to get to know them better and all of those sorts of things. But I don't know that I need to spend all the money to go there and to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of the education sessions are the same thing. They're just not made for us. You know?
They didn't seem particularly interesting this year to me.
No, that was the other broad consensus was that the education sort of took a step back this year after many years of improving and being better.
There was Dan Wells wants to have a panel on the economics of publishing because he was talking to people about Duck's Newburyport and how they just got their first check this in the end of January for the sales of that after they had invested like hundreds of thousands of dollars into all the printings and everything related to that, and no bookseller realized that, and like how and like because he was in some panel or some discussion about how booksellers wanted to pay net 90 instead of net 60, and he was talking about all the problems that they were having or they could potentially have because of the cash flow related to this very, very big book that blew up for them but requires all the investment to happen months and months and months before you get a dime from Ingram.
Well,
from those sales.
That's partly an Ingram issue and not necessarily.
But the booksellers aren't aware of that level of the industry or how they don't have that money right now and how that it is very precarious still.
Yeah, I mean, I do think more booksellers would be better served to understand publishing a little bit better, but man, that's a whole lot to unpack. It's not like you can talk about all that in an hour.
Yeah, but you could have some sort of conversation that would be useful. You know who recommended American Dirt on LitHub?
Oh God, who?
Emily Temple.
It's not surprising.
I know, but it's there.
So there's one other thing that came out of Winter Institute we should probably talk about, and I feel like these two things are related because I feel like basically when people ask me, what do you think of Winter Institute, or what do you think what went on there this year, you're basically asking the question, like, what is the tenor of book selling right now? Like, where does the industry feel it is right now? Does it feel like it's sustainable? Does it not? Why? Et cetera, right? And every store is going to answer that question differently, and every store is confronting the answer to that differently, right? Mm-hmm. A bar, for example, you know, and I went to a panel about whether or not you should put a cafe in your bookstore and all of that, and you know, there's obviously board game and sideline sort of galore, always in the air, discussed, you know, how to increase margins and all those sorts of things. And I don't know if you were in the town hall meeting.
No.
But there was a rather firm sort of statement that the bookselling model as it currently stands, the margins are untenable. And I feel like this is a sort of subtle but pointed, you know, attack, for lack of a better term, towards the publishing industry and the terms that we are given to sell books, i.e. the discounts that we get, which obviously vary from store to store based on credit history and all these sorts of things. But, you know, they max out at a certain point. Small temporary promotions aside, you know, they max out at a certain point. And basically booksellers, and perhaps even through the ABA as a body, are sort of pushing back and saying, we need more. And I don't know that they're going to get that, but I feel like they are making the push. And it'll be interesting to see if the publishing industry, the Big Five, and IPS distributes so many small publishers now, are going to be, amenable to that sort of thing, and what that would do to their bottom lines, and what that would do to salaries for, everybody from editorial assistants just out of college up to the CEOs of these companies. I tend to think that they could probably afford to give us a few more points, just because I know we're such a small portion of their revenue streams, and compared to Amazon and all the other ways that publishers sell books, independent bookstores are quite small in the grand scheme of things. But we are culturally sort of outweigh everything else. So I don't know. Maybe they should pay for that. Maybe they should help us be sustainable in that way. I don't know. But so related to this was Bookshop. The launch of which happened right after Winter Institute, and the rollout, like the year-long sort of rollout, also happened at Winter Institute with Annie Hunter, sort of introducing it at the town hall very quickly, and then also there was a panel right afterwards in which he laid it all out, the way it works and stats and all that sort of thing. It has been met with some criticism, to say the least, but it is, for anyone who hasn't heard, basically the independent bookselling version of Amazon, or Amazon Lite, as my friend Gibran likes to call it. And the idea is that independent bookstores can sign up and either have their own page and get 20% of all sales made through that link, or just say that they want to be a part of it and collect and do nothing at all, but collect 10% of all, the sales that's split up between all of the stores that sign up, obviously. But collect that.
Which isn't going to be very much.
It isn't. Well, I mean, if it's $1,000 every few months, that's not nothing.
But divided between 1,000 bookstores. So far, they have $2,000 in that pot.
That's it?
Yeah. Yeah. That seems remarkably low for something that was having this sort of rollout. Sure, maybe it will get more attention later and jump, but I was suspecting that if this was going to work, it would be much higher right from the jump.
Right.
I got $1.60 in my commission. Got $1.60 coming to me, people buying through my store, because I'm putting together my own store, which I think is the fatal flaw in this whole Bookshop thing.
Well, yes, that is the fatal flaw, and as we saw on Twitter,
it took 2 seconds for everyone to realize this. I've fucking been complaining about this for a year now. And finally, I feel so justified.
But the problem is that anyone can create an affiliate page.
Yep.
And authors, of course, can do this as well, which means that when they sell a book through their affiliate page, they're getting royalties on the sale via their publisher, the traditional way, that anytime a book is sold that they get a royalty. But on top of that, they're getting what would have been a store's profit share.
Yep.
Getting double royalties, for lack of a better term. And so, some sort of crass authors might go out there and say, buy it through me. It's better for me in the long run.
Yep.
And with no concern or regard for the bookstores that might have otherwise made that sale.
And it's a platform for people to become booksellers without a store, if they want to. The people how there have been affiliate links before, but a lot of people that are doing reviews or being very vocal about the books that they want to support, it'd be simple for them to just make an affiliate page, get a few sales through that are taking away from the bookstore, but also benefiting them. And if that becomes I think Maris has a thing set up already, and she's got enough clout where she could actually, drive certain sales to her affiliate page instead of wherever else they'd be getting the book. So it all starts to fall apart very quickly as maybe not helping independent bookstores as much as they think. It didn't, as part of the announcement, didn't Andy Hunter say something well, I'm pretty sure this might not work.
Yeah. I mean,
of course. What are we doing? Who's getting the rest of this money, by the way?
What do you mean the rest of the money?
Any of the profits that aren't, it's not a nonprofit. Where is the rest of the money going?
I mean, it's just keeping the website going.
So Andy Hunter's not getting paid for this?
No.
The ABA is not getting paid for this?
No. There are some investors who have to be paid back, but it's not.
Who are the investors?
He's not going to tell, but,
We can all guess.
Yeah, there's no like hedge funds or anything like that. But it's set up as a B Corp, which means that all profits have to be reinvested. So,
Yeah.
I mean, his whole model is based on the affiliates sort of carrying it, not bookstore links carrying it.
Yeah.
Right? So he's aware of where the money's going to have to come from. I don't know. I mean, look, I want Amazon to be broken up and not exist anymore just as badly as anyone else. I just don't know that this is going to be the thing to do it.
Oh, I definitely don't think it is. It'd be nice if they did have ebooks and audiobooks on here, but they didn't. They say they're going to do that by March.
Yeah, I mean, everything is being rolled out.
Also, I ordered a book from here, and I have not received it.
Well, yeah, fulfillment's being done by Ingram, which
I assume so.
Yeah, is not necessarily the quickest.
Yeah, funny. Yeah, I'm gonna save my comment about that for my post.
It's also
a lot of this is rehashed in there.
Right. It's also there are discounts.
Very bad discounts.
Very bad discounts.
Yeah.
Well, but he decided if he didn't have discounts that people would just leave immediately because they know they can get it cheaper on Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, you look at anything and you can get it cheaper on Amazon from this.
Right.
It's not, the discounts are like a few percentage.
Right.
Like it's not even significant. And because they charge shipping, it's like automatically like it doesn't even feel like it's discounted.
Right. Yeah.
At all. I had to order a book for my class because I lost the fucking copy that I had. So I actually need it. I need them to do their job. But I felt like I was getting ripped off paying like so much for this stupid book that I should have an exam copy of.
Yeah. I don't know. I am trying very hard to be optimistic about this thing, but it doesn't seem to be working out that way so far.
I can't imagine that this is around in 2 years. I mean, something very dramatic would have to happen for it to be significant. I mean, it could be like that it exists and like the way that like Bookish exists, and Bookish was an attempt to do this years ago and never quite got going, and that still exists, but like nobody cares about it.
Right.
And like there's so many of those that just sort of like fall to the wayside, and I have a hard time believing that this would be more successful than those, just because it doesn't seem to be. I think it would have started out much bigger. Maybe they need a new campaign or something. Maybe.
Maybe not even a new. They need to reach out to the people who have the power to like change all the links on a website, right? And yeah, they have the New York Times and they have I think some other people lined up, but LitHub has like whatever, but they need like the millions for Christ's sake. Book Riot, people with actual broad readership for like book content need to get off of Amazon and move to it in a meaningful way before it's really going to start affecting things.
Yeah. I'm looking at their lists on here. They're not that interesting. It just looks like a generic. I mean, this is one of the problems too. So if they're going to try and what you're saying, like the New York Times stuff, all those places, they're just going to end up being the same as every fucking other place. Like there's no uniqueness. Like the uniqueness that would come from people being able to create their own unique lists of books, as one would claim a bookstore is doing, is really dissolved in here. Like this is just the same as everything else.
Well, the other problem is, it is absolutely impossible, as it should be, to recreate a bookstore experience online. I run a very small bookstore, 5,000 books. But there's no fucking way when a customer comes in and says, I'm looking for something good, and I start having a conversation with them, like it is clearly not like the 10 things that are on the table that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of all 5,000 books in the store, some of it backlist, some of it 3 years old, some of it 50 years old. Like there's just no way to like create a list that is going to sufficiently recreate what it's like to be in any one particular bookstore, right? So that means that ambition needs to just disappear, because that's just not going to happen. The only thing that this is useful for is like what you're talking about, where like Maris, for example, can like say, here's these things I'm excited about this season, buy them here.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. I'm making lists upon lists upon lists.
If you think you share her taste or she's recommended good things to you in your past, then it makes sense, right?
Right.
But bookstores, it's going to be very hard to recreate their sort of environment online. Even if you had a million lists of like every employee's favorite books of the last year, favorite books of all time, it's just not the same. If you can't talk to somebody, you're missing a key element to what it is to buy a book from a human being. And yes, it's ambitious to try, and I applaud the people who have spent time doing this, but I don't know. Maybe this is just one of these things where you just have to be like, you know what? It's just not possible, and we should stick to what we do best. Which brings me back. So after the town hall meeting in which ABA president, Jamie Fineraco from, I'm blanking on the name.
Romans?
No, she's from, she's in Chapel Hill. What's the name of that new store?
Oh, no.
Sorry. From Flyleaf. Who I really like.
Flyleaf, yeah.
After she had said that, the margins as they currently exist, the model of book selling is untenable, an editor, who I will not throw under the bus here, came up to me and is like, what is all this talk about the model being untenable? Like, is this your experience? Like, what the fuck? I feel like there's like got to be a better way to go about this. Like you can't just like tweak margins all over the place. Like there are ripple effects and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, yes, like I do wonder if, and it got me thinking, and I was talking to Brad, who, he owns a bookstore in Oakland, and it's been around for a long time and has reputation, and he has good clients and whatever. So he and I are in different situations where I'm still trying to attract new customers and make them loyal. He's got a certain loyalty baked in already when he bought the store. But, his margins are pretty healthy, and all he sells is books and like a few note cards and things like that. Like, he's not doing tons of sidelines. He's not selling socks. He doesn't have a cafe. He doesn't have a bar. And he's doing just fine, right? Mm-hmm. He's not going to become a millionaire, but he's, the store is thriving. And I think instead of worrying about, having an online store and having all these sidelines and all of these things all take attention away from the primary thing that people who open a bookstore do, which is sell books. Like, figure out ways to sell more books in your store, and you would do better. Do you know what I mean? Like, use your space better, manage your stock better. There's so many little things that booksellers could be doing, I think, that would increase their margins that are still focused entirely on books, right? And that's the sort of impossible thing, because every store is different. I know this, but that is the sort of intangible thing that every bookseller, I think, should be thinking first and foremost. Our margins are not great. How do we fix them? The answer is not bring in mugs. It has to be, I think people should draw back a little bit and stop worrying about, competing with Amazon or competing with gift shops and all of these sorts of things, and just step back and focus on the books. That's my 2 cents. I wish.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I know.
Easier said than done.
It is, and absolutely. But there, is your payroll too high? Is, are you maximizing space? Are you buying the right way for the season? Are you buying because you think that's what you need to be buying? Like, there's so many little tweaks. Are you returning regularly? There are so many ways you can cut costs and increase sales that are still focused on what make bookstores, a unique cultural experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's just hard to get people to buy books.
Well, I mean, there's also that. I mean, readership goes down year after year after year after year, and it's depressing, frankly. But it's not going to go away entirely. You just have to sort of figure out exactly what it is people want to come into a store and buy in person. Yeah. And why they're there in the first place, Mm-hmm. Like, why did somebody walk through your door? That should be the question, and then sell them the reason they walked through the door. And you can't make a sale to everybody. Look, I have plenty of customers who come in and they've heard about us and they're just curious, right? But then they walk in and they see our taste and they're very nice people, but like we don't sell the kind of books that they're looking for, and that's fine. But I can't make everybody happy. I have to focus on making the people that are my loyal customers happy, you know? So.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Is there anything else to add to all of that?
I don't know.
Or anything else?
I don't feel, I didn't feel like there was like the one book from our little circle of, you know, people that we pay attention to. Did you feel that way?
I didn't see very many things, like anyone really being excited about anything in particular. I think that our On Time and Water is going to be the book that comes out of all that in a major way, but that's that it wasn't like the thing that everyone was talking about there. There was nothing that everyone was talking about. Even like the author night, there was the same number. It didn't seem like there were more authors that were signing this year than in the past. It seemed about the same to me. Because it's always been like huge and surrounded like that. But even that, like the big name people there it didn't feel quite as glitzy as years past.
Agreed. I definitely agree.
Like there was like Colin McCann was there, Lily King, like some people that are like have big followings, obviously, Michael Ian Black. But like but in the past, I feel like there was always like, they just rolled out everyone that they could that was like a big name star that has a book coming out. But it might be that there's just not that many things that people are really pimping for this year because everyone's uncertain about how book sales will be related to the election.
Yeah, which is a very serious concern.
Yeah, I could see like everyone being like, we're going to hold off on like our biggest books until 2021.
Right. Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me in the least. And that could explain why there's like sort of it just felt very quiet.
Yeah, I mean, I had several small publishers whose lists for the fall and afterwards were sort of still up in the air, being fine-tuned, who asked me point blank, like, should we delay this? Right? And I was like, yes, you should delay this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's definitely a concern. And because there's track records. I mean, booksellers have been doing this long enough to know that when, you know, first week of October comes around, people's attention is 100% on the forthcoming election.
Yeah.
It's that they're buying election books, or they're just not going to bookstores, period. You know, so that's, you know, we're all going to have to brace for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll screw you guys up far more than others. Not you personally, but bookstores more so than publishers.
Yeah, publishers can, like we just said, they can time it. They can hold off. They can sit on it. You know, they don't have to print them right now. They can, you know, there can be half as big as it was and all those sorts of things. But, you know, I still have to have books on the shelves. And I still need customers coming through the door. This is where having the bar is useful. Very useful. You know, I can show the debates in my bar.
You guys have a TV in there or no?
No, I have a projector.
Oh.
So when there are big things like the debates, we've shown a couple of the debates. We show, like, you know, movies, you know, local filmmakers, sorts of things every once in a while. I might do a Super Tuesday, like, results watch party type thing. People have been into it. They want to do these sorts of things in communal sort of situations. A lot of people don't have TVs, obviously. So, called the cord cutting culture, right? So we do that, and it helps. You know, it helps buoy, you know, sales that we're losing because everyone just is totally distracted by all of the political stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. I assume that you guys would be showing stuff like that in there. And that'll help some.
It helps some. You know, it's not going to make up totally. And, you know, our book club will continue. I think the kinds of things that might sell are going to be the sort of whatever comforts people, you know, the off-the-wall sci-fi, you know, the things that people read when they want distraction. You know, for me, it's like Chandler or something. And maybe they'll just pick up books they have at home. But hopefully if they're, you know, some interesting sort of totally unrelated to the political landscape, but also not like a huge investment of, you know, time or headspace, I think people might sort of be drawn to those kinds of things.
Yeah. We'll see. It'll be interesting. We got our one of our big books come out in May and September. So, and then next February are the three most like Not that those are the only ones, but are the only good books, but the ones that are like the biggest potential sales are those three.
Do you want to go over those for people?
I think everyone's already heard all of this, but the three are Sara Mesa's 4x4 comes in May. That we had the second version of the galley at Winter Institute, and a lot of people picked it up. And I know Jeremy Garber is a huge fan. Caitlin Baker, a lot of booksellers have really, really loved it.
What do you mean second copy?
Our second version of the galley. We printed a set of them, and then we finished editing it and printed a new version of that for Winter Institute alone. Because you have to have 150 copies there. So
right, but so the version that I have is slightly edited in this new version.
Yeah, and then there's it's all finished now. All the finished changes, all the typos have been corrected. Everything is now. Nobody has that version yet. But the one that was at Winter Institute is the closest. It's very close. You wouldn't notice. Most of this you wouldn't notice. It's very in the weeds.
Well, that was my question. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like you'd be like, holy shit, this is totally different. It's just a bit smoother, a bit more. There's a lot of interpretation that went into the translation of it, and there's little things that were tweaked to make sure that all played right. But nothing that you would necessarily notice unless you really looked carefully again, like at the third part. The third part was revised heavily to make it much more philosophically sharp because we figured it out. But that's fine. Nobody's gonna notice that. Whatever version you have is good. Then on Time and Water is Andri Snær Magnason's book on glaciers and climate change, or the impact of climate change on glaciers and what that's doing throughout the world. And basically it's a bunch of stories about his family as well, and about his family history, which is wild. The craziest one, so I knew about a bunch of this, like his grandfather operated on Oppenheimer, the Shah of Iran, and on Andy Warhol, and was the doctor that was accused of killing Andy Warhol because Andy Warhol died the day after the operation. So he was under part of a lawsuit for like 20 years. It was just resolved not that long ago. Now I don't think it's that grandfather's sister, but his other grandfather's sister was the nanny for Tolkien's son while he was writing The Hobbit, and taught Tolkien Icelandic. And like a bunch of like the stories about stuff that are in The Hobbit are kind of Icelandic influenced stories that she was telling his son. That's also fucking crazy. And then his other grandparents started the what do they call it? It's like Iceland's Glacier Association, whatever, something like that. And we're studying the glaciers in Iceland from like 1953 onwards, I believe. So they have like a ton of the data and research for what's happening and how things have changed are from like his grandparents and their descendants. So it's a wild book. I'm finishing editing it now, which is Lytton Smith translated it, so it's not like a ton of like edits, but there's a lot of little details to this, and it's a book that we had to hire a copy editor for to make sure that they can do the fact checking, because there's an enormous amount of like stray details of like from reports from like the UN's reports on climate change from like various scientists. So there's a lot of stuff to like verify, which is also very complicated because it's all tends to be in the metric system. And that's a whole thing. But it's really good, and it's going to be amazing when we're able to bring it out and share it. There's copies at Winter Institute, and we'll have more galleys of that soon after I finish this edit. The last book that's coming next February that we just got the translation in, and I've read like 50 pages of it, and this is the most fucking wild book ever. This is the book that if this book does not... So Mara Fay Lytham translated from the Catalan a book called The Adventures and Misadventures of the Extraordinary and Admirable Joan Orpi, conqueror and founder of New Catalunya. And it's by Max Besora. And this is... If this doesn't win awards for her, then there is no justice in the world. Like, this is taking a full-on big swing at what translation can do. She had to invent her own sort of old-timey language. Like, there's aspects of like a Middle English, because this takes place in the 1700s. It's like a faux historical novel that's filled with like lots of fart jokes and anachronistic stuff about this real life character, Joan Orpi, who went to Venezuela and created a new Catalonia in the tip of Venezuela, and it failed. This utopia failed. But then it was refounded and was there until like the 1800s, when there was like a war to get rid of it. Like Venezuela should like go to war within its own borders to be like, no, you're not a separate country. Like, you're in Venezuela. Like, fuck you. But the language is totally invented to be like a like something from that period of time without being from that period of time. I have never read anything like this in translation at all. That's this wild and this funny and this inventive. Like, it's so inventive. Like, the what she did to make this work is beyond compare. Like, I can't even begin to describe. You'd have to just see it. It's a long book too. It's like 400 pages. But it's wild. And for it to be, if it's consistent throughout, this is definitely a book that deserves an award for the translation without question. There's nobody's done anything like this. This is wild.
Cool.
And that's next February. We wanted to have it out this September, but we ran into problems, and first because of the election, but we ran into problems with other contract obligations. So we moved it to February, but it's going to be in all the catalogs now. Like, we're doing our sales pitch tomorrow to Consortium for our pre-sales for it. So it won't be too long before like all the information's out there, and we'll have a cover and all that kind of stuff. So it's not really that far, but it is like a year, which just always seems insane.
Cool. That all sounds very good. I'm very excited about the Glacier book.
The Glacier book's wild.
I'm reading a lot of very, literary things like that. I don't know why I just thought of this, but I think it's because in the book, related to the book you were just talking about, Latham's translation. So we just did a book club meeting for Tentacle, Rita and Nate's book. And so I reread it, and the second time through, I sort of skipped. Have you read it?
No. I don't think we have it here. We did, but somebody took it.
There's a portion of the book, and I won't give too much away. I do think people should read it. It's a really fascinating book. But there's a portion of the book that takes place in like the 1600s in Dominican Republic, when colonizers were first coming and were around the area in the Caribbean. And there's an abrupt switch every time it happens from present day, or whatever, loosely present day, to that time period, and the language shifts ever so slightly, right? And it's very fascinating to watch that sort of play out in English translation, when you know that the Spanish was probably more complicated to deal with than the English is, if that makes sense. And then so in the middle of the discussion, but I didn't really think about it, right? I just read it. I was like, okay, fine. But during the book club discussion, a lot of people were focusing on like how the book was translated itself, and I thought it was an interesting sort of look at those things, because usually you get the book like that and it's like all in the 1600s or all in the present, right? And it very rarely goes back and forth like without like a huge break, right? Like a paragraph break or a chapter break or something like that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's an interesting book for the translation aspect, because there's also a trans character who makes the transition in the middle of the book, and so the pronouns switch. And
oh, right, I remember that coming up before.
Anyway, what do you read?
The On Time and Water, and this amazing this book. I need to finish it before I can really write about it. But let me get the correct title up here. So Patrik Ourednik. When I was at Delkey, we published Europeana by him. That was like very, very popular. A lot of people sort of love that book. They did a couple books of his after that, called Case Closed, and what was the other one? I can't remember what it is. But so this fourth book is coming out this spring, and it's the second book of his. He's a Czech writer, but he lives in France, has lived in France forever, and he started writing in French recently. So this is translated from the French, but it's by a Czech author, and it's called The End of the World Might Not Have Taken Place. And it's a series of like 111 very short chapters about this relationship between this guy and his friend who had come and worked in the U.S. essentially for a Trump-like character for a brief period, although it doesn't name Trump. But it's the guy that's writing this and sort of chronicling it is obsessed with the idea of how everything's going to end, how everyone's going to die, how the world's going to end, and all the different possibilities of that. And it's fucking wildly funny. It's really entertaining. I've like 50 pages in. I still have a lot of it to read because I got trapped into editing for every second of my life. But it's wonderful. It supposedly comes out in February. I'm not sure that that's actually going to be the case. The pub date might get bumped, but if you can get a hold of it, it's really, really good. Cool.
I am reading a very strange book that I'm already fascinated with just because it's weird. It's called Grabeland. It's by the team of artists, two artists called eteam. And it's basically an art project as a novel in which these two German-American, and I could be getting that wrong, but one of them at least is German-American artists in New York buy a plot of land randomly without seeing it on the internet in Germany, and it turns out to be like a community garden that people pay rent on. And so periodically, over many years, they go and sort of visit the land and sort of take stock on what's going around with these, people who live in the middle of nowhere in Germany. And then they go back to New York and do their own thing and go back and forth and whatever. And it's fascinating look at like the differences in sort of context and what people make of land and what land's value is and all the sorts of things. And it's fictionalized, but it is very obviously like that they did this. Anyway, I'm only like 50 pages in, but man, it's just so like matter-of-factly written, but also there's like fictional letters and like fictional like conversations with these people who are renting the land, like these angry old Germans. And it's really fascinating. It was supposed to be published by Fence in 2016 with the title OS Grabeland. So this is Grabeland, like Graceland with a B instead of a C.
I found it now. I'm going to add it to my store, my affiliate store on Bookshop.
It's got a much better title. It's just Grabeland, and a much better cover now that it's being put out by Nightboat. It's really great. I think you'll like it. I mean, if you liked Dead Fashion Girl, I think this is sort of in that vein. So
yeah, it's weird. So why did they not publish it when they were going to?
So there's a note here on a review for the book from 2016, pre-publication for the Fence edition, and the note says that it had been withdrawn by the authors from Fence, and that Fence told the reviewer, Jacob Kahn, that it was due to something akin to, quote, irreconcilable differences.
Wow.
So.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's wild. And so 4 years later, we're getting, I hope, apparently they've made changes. I don't know how many changes, but basically the same book from Nightboat.
Oh yeah, it's funny because there are blurbs online that are from the older edition.
Yeah. So yeah, if you go to Full Stop, there's an actual review of the book from 2016.
Oh, there is? That's where this one's coming from? Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. I'll link to that too in the notes. I'm just gonna put everything onto Bookshop so everyone can just go through there and see everything that we talked about. But cool. I don't have anything else to add.
Nope.
This is wild. I'm gonna read this review though. Yeah, the other cover was not very good.
No, I mean it's also like that image is very low res, but
I don't get that. I don't get why it's because the writing on top of it is perfectly clear. So it's like an intentional low res image, huh?
It could be. I mean, that would make sense considering like once you start reading, their other art besides the book does sort of focus on these issues. So
yeah, weird. Interesting. eteam is a very strange thing to try and Google, by the way.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And
it does not lead where you want it to.
No, it doesn't. But eventually you'll find them. They have a website. They're pretty cool.
Yeah. There's the best one. The best one is eteam. Don't bother. It's a scam from Glassdoor. That's my favorite.
Right.
eteam, as an existent employee agency, has a 1-star rating on Google.
Yeah, I think they've sort of they're leaning into that.
That's super funny.
Yes.
It's so weird. Anyways, okay, cool. I don't have anything else to add. I don't know. We'll talk in a couple weeks about something else.
Yes, we'll move on from
American Dirt.
American Dirt.
1 hour, and then I got to go teach that whole thing again. Oh.
Have fun.
I will. Okay, cool, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.
And we should have known better.